I'm Applewood, and I am the coach for Path to Poverty, who most recently got second place in Jayne's Tournament of Future Champions after being relatively unknowns in the Tier 3 scene for most people, I would say, until after that tournament. So today I'm going to be reviewing two of the maps for our game against our semifinal game in that tournament against Skyfoxes, the contenders team. So I wanted to make sure I went through these things. Going to be talking about a lot today, both theory things on what should be occurring as well as what individual things we might be doing that we can change instead. It would make it a lot easier on us to figure this kind of stuff out, but we'll talk about it. Hopefully, I'll figure out, or I'll give you some information and give you some insight into how the game is played. Um, but we're going to go ahead and jump right in with Numbani. And then after that, we'll be checking out Ilios, which were the two last maps in our set from that particular match. So you can see already, we started out on defense on Numbani. Our composition, they haven't come out yet, so that's not their real comp. Our composition is heavy poke. It's very effective against a goat's composition, less so against a more dive comp because we want to hit people in rotation, and then if they do get set up on point, we want to be able to put pressure on them to do something, and then from there, really focus down people with our damage from our pharmacy comp, and then if our Anna is healing tanks and getting good nades off, while our Sombra is also hacking tanks or hacking other targets, and then we're then following up with all the damage that we can build our ultimates and hold this point very easily. So we'll go ahead and jump right on in. Our positioning, we're going to be looking to keep our Sombra out front of their spawn point right at the very beginning to scout out what they're running. We do scrim against Skyfoxes on occasion, so it should be expected that they kind of know what we're going to run, but you can see that Xretzi comes out with his Sombra and scouts what we're running, and they switch to a more dive composition. So now what we need to be doing in all likelihood, because that is a dive composition, because we know what is coming, is we need to be pretty aggressive with what we're doing while they're getting into place. We can't give up. Here, let me show you. So from this position, we can't really let them get into a dive position, the main one being right here. For their tanks to get onto our Ana where she is, or even get onto the high ground. We know that this is their Tracer who's going to be going around behind us, so we need to make sure that we're making the proper rotations, but we also need to punish them and make it really difficult for them to get set up and then make a dive without taking a lot of damage. So we should be positioned a little more aggressively with what we're doing once we recognize that it is not a goat's composition and instead a dive composition. So while Xretzi is moving into space, moving into position to flank our back line, specifically the Ana, because she's the only real dive target in this comp, the rest of our team needs to be poking out their tanks, poking out King. So basically the tanks and King is who they need to be shooting at. Once we do see their Tracer flank behind us, you can see that our Anna drops off the high ground to fall back to blue car. She's really the only dive target that we have. So if she plays very safe, it should mitigate any issues with their dive that we might have. And you can see it kind of works for us. Xretzi is not getting a lot of value from his play, and we're doing quite a bit of damage to them. But in that same vein, our main tank and our off tank are both taking quite a bit of damage because they stood in the area where the dive was coming in. So our main tank gets taken out, our off tank gets demeched, and they end up just cleaning us up after this. So basically, we should have received the dive, forced them to take all of their mobility to dive a target that wasn't there because nobody had scouted that our Ana had dropped back, presumably, because their tracer wasn't in place yet. But it would allow us to then jump onto them, really get in their faces, um, and they wouldn't have any mobility to get away. They wouldn't have very much mobility, and we would have had the burst damage coming from our Pharmacy, coming from our Winston and our Diva, utilizing their mobility and all of their cooldowns to do damage on the divers who would have found no value from what they were doing. So at this point, it's just clean up for their team. There's no way that we're going to win this fight. They intend to switch their comp up, so King goes ahead and uses his blade, even though they probably could have won this fight without it. Jolf switches to Hammond just to delay even longer, because maybe we think that we can hold on to it, but we really can't. Yeah, we just needed to position a little more aggressively, and then when they did dive, counter dive onto them, because their dive wouldn't have found anything. At this point, our main tanks, or our Pharmacy switches to a Lucio and to a Brigitte, and with those two characters, we're able to do a lot more damage to a single target. We're able to move our team in and out of trouble, specifically our main tank and our flex healer. But we kept Ultraviolet on Ana through the first portion of Streets phase because of the nano boost, and then later on, and also because we can EMP with an anti-nade. But then later on, until he dies, he stays on the Ana, and I think eventually he switches just because we needed a Zenyatta for what we were switching to. We're positioned very aggressively here. Really what we want is to hold them at this corner right here, to take our first fight in this kind of general area. That allows us to get more fights out of the second phase, and if they do wipe us, then we'll have time to come from a really, really long spawn on Numbani all the way back to Cart. Dove is positioned pretty aggressively to get this EMP off. They have switched to a very anti-dive composition with double stun coming from a Brigitte and then also from a McCree, blowing up a single target, specifically a Winston, or even a whatever that person is called, a Diva, and destroying those single targets. But with what we're running, it's very, very effective because we don't have a Zarya to bubble the Winston when he engages, and to have that Winston tank the stuns. So it's a very, very effective comp in theory against what we're running. And that way, they expect to be able to blow up our Winston and then win the fight because of that, because we lose a main tank before anything else has happened, and then we can't engage upon them. But known to them, and unfortunately for them, we have an EMP here, and we EMP well enough that it wins this fight for us. And at this point, their goal is to get Verbo in such a position that he can hold back and beat the EMP, because they know it's coming. So you can see him start to taper off back here while the rest of his team pushes forward, because he expects to have the EMP come in and then immediately drop beat right after the EMP effect goes in, and hopefully keep the rest of his team alive. But our target focus and our coordination is good enough that when Dove calls that he's EMPing, Jolf is already jumping with his Winston towards their back line, and we're able to one-shot their Zenyatta straight out of this EMP before they can drop the beat. You can see that Snow is basically already dead by the time Verbo's casting his beat. So we win the fight. Then we just back off. You can see that our entire team pushed in to try and push them back. It worked very effectively. Our Brigitte's shield got broken, but he was positioned aggressively and he does end up getting out, but we are trying to work so that he doesn't position as aggressively in the future here. So they switched to a full Flying Goats composition. So what they're going to be doing is engaging on our back line with their Winston and forcing us to use abilities to keep up this particular target. And from there, they're hoping to win those fights. Let's see how they come out here. We still have Nano, and so we're intending to use it because at this point we're like, okay, we're okay with losing a fight. We just need to be able to get some value or hopefully get value out of the Nano boost we've been sitting on since we didn't use it last time. So we're going for another early engage here with Nano boosting our Winston. And then we're going to follow up as a team once he's split them from the rest of everybody. So you can see our Winston is nanoed and our Sombra is in their back line. It allows us to follow up really, really well. See if I can get the quality even better now. So the Winston, our Winston falls in their back line and gets killed. This point, we're just trying to retreat out. Moopy has counter-engaged on our back line with his Primal Rage, and he's able to boop our people around. This would be a very solidly won fight for them. However, Hot Date throws his bomb however long and ends up getting their Lucio. So they still win the fight, and they still push us back, but you know, they're not able to follow us into our own spawn because they don't have speed to do it, whereas we do. And we're able to get Ultraviolet. We speed Ultraviolet all the way back into spawn so that he can switch off to Zenyatta, because we need to have the ability with the comp that we're running right here. We have really no burst damage unless it's a 5 orb coming from him, and even then those are inconsistent at best. So what we really, really want to do is get a Discord on a single target and then have everybody focus that target down. Again, we're pretty close to an EMP, so we decide to keep Dove on it. This is a comp that we actually like to run. It's a triple support with a Sombra. I know that you've probably heard of a triple support with a McCree, but it's a very, very different kind of comp. It's a very proactive comp, and we're a very aggressive team, so we like having a proactive approach. We like being able to take fights early and often with the use of a Sombra. And it's pretty. We've been pretty effective with it, but you can see that we're moving in here. We haven't used any speed boosts or anything. Jolf is going to jump into their back line. He's got his Q, so if he feels the pressure, he can press Q and get 1,000 hit points of Gorilla into their back line to change things up for him. But what he does with his jump and then his shield ability is he splits their backline from their main team, allowing us to focus on target with all of our team and all of our presence, and it keeps us in this fight. So here he splits his team, he splits the value that they might get. He keeps their Zenyatta out of the LOS of our entire team, so Snow is not getting value and being able to shoot into our backline. And here you can see that he's able to boot people around quite a bit more. And we end up winning the fight because we're able to peel their back line away from the rest of their team. And now it's just cleanup. But Ultraviolet does go a little too aggressive to go after that particular character. To go after Zarya, and he pays for it, so we have to back off a little bit here. And honestly, that's really, really bad for us. We need him to position less aggressively. But now we get to hold up while we're getting our Zenyatta back, and we have EMP. So in this next fight, what happens is our main tank is positioned, or our Sombra is positioned too close to our main tank is probably the main thing. And because of this, he gets found out because our main tank is taking pressure, even if it's fall-off pressure from Diva left clicks from a distance. So it gets Dove out of stealth on Sombra, and it forces him to EMP sooner than he wanted, as you can see right here. That lets Snow get his ultimate off, and once Snow gets his ultimate off, we're kind of in a bad spot, but we end up winning the fight because we beat... oh no, we lose this fight, that's correct. And our trance comes in just that, it comes in a little too late to protect the rest of the team. Because here you can see our beat comes in while they're trancing. They grab us on cart, and they're able to demech Hot Date and kill Big Al before they can even get the trance to them to hopefully keep them up. In many of these GOATS compositions, you can actually, if there's a grav, your team can generally out-damage targets in the grav, so it's rarely necessary to use, say, a bomb to open up that grav to really kill anything in it, because then you could just use it to build ult charge for, you know, Moopy or Snow or whomever else is shooting into the grav. On third point, the more traditional, you know, Rhine goats, even though we're running as Zenyatta, is going to be is good because there's a lot less high ground to play around with. It's a lot more difficult to jump past our group into our back line because there's a lot of corner holding. We go aggressive here, and just because we have a shield, it should work for us generally. But you can see to even get into this fight, we use a lot of cooldowns. So we've used... Zarya just came out of her own personal bubble. And we use the other Zarya bubble right here to continue our aggression. Zoms recognizes that we've used both of our bubbles and recognizes that this is a long hallway that we're going to have a hard time getting out of. So he takes the opportunity to throw his bomb reactively. Not in a set play or anything like that. So they receive the aggression a lot better than we can put it out, unfortunately. Even though we do kill Xretzi with his Zarya. And from there, it allows them to beat back into us and take more space from us. So while Moopy is primaling in our back line, Angelic gets killed by the Brigitte. Their Zenyatta trances aggressively into us, probably initially to save Moopy, because Moopy is critical here. But he has the ability to jump out, so they want to go back in aggressively with this Transcendence. But luckily we have our own Transcendence to keep the team up, and mostly to keep our Reinhardt up. And our Rein uses his ultimate to knock people to the floor, and then we finish up on them. So we hold them at this corner. With the GOATS composition, you really, really want to hold corners. Basically, the idea of it is... here, let's take this corner. Oh, okay, well, 1 second. Let's take this corner, for example. If you're the defending team, you want to hold this corner right here, because that forces them to walk it and have your Zenyatta sitting back here, have your Reinhardt obviously right up on the corner, have your Brigitte right up on the corner. So as they walk up, they have to enter your Zenyatta's line of sight to get anything done, whilst all you have to do as Reinhardt and Brigitte is hold left click and hit around the corner like that. And you're doing a lot of damage, and there Reinhardt has to either drop his shield and swing back, in which case he'll get discorded and take more damage. Then the enemy or the attacking team will have to use cooldowns to bail him out, or he'll back up, or he'll continue holding shield, none of which is great. You know, there is a big defensive advantage when you have this kind of setup, and all the while the attacking Rhine is taking damage, the defensive Rhine is out of the way of the enemy Zenyatta. So if the enemy Zenyatta is sitting back here, he can't get a line of sight on the defending Zenyatta, or the defending Reinhardt, excuse me. And it makes it a lot easier for the defense to hold, because they can use Discord and the enemy team can't. And even if their Reinhardt doesn't drop his shield, we can force them to drop shield by bashing with the Brigitte, who's standing up with our Reinhardt defensively. So on this fight, we don't really hold the corner that we want, right? They take a wide angle on us, so we back off. And then the issue is here, instead of receiving their aggression and backing up a little bit and then re-aggressing onto them as they use cooldowns, our Brigitte jumps into their team using bash, and it ends up costing us pretty dearly because he gets killed. And then from there, the rest of the team just gets cleaned up because they have a Brigitte and we don't. So a lot of our ability to sustain, as well as our ability to hit a single target and focus it down with Brigitte damage and stun and all that good stuff is kneecapped because we don't have a Brigitte. So they end up just grabbing us early and keeping us off the cart and ending the map right here, or ending their offense right here. So they do get all 3 points. And we didn't get to recontest or get them under a minute. So those were mistakes by us that we could have easily fixed. Unfortunately, we kind of let them do that to us. So defensively here, the reason their team is set up is because they're expecting us to want to take high ground from them, and then they're going to stuff us in this doorway. What the Skyfoxes end up doing is they don't stuff us very hard in the doorway. They let us out of the doorway without having to extend too much. The first fight they do end up winning, but it's at cost. In the second fight, it gets drawn out a little more in our favor, even though they have the ult advantage, and we'll see why. Right. So we see that their Zenyatta is aggressively positioned, and by aggressive I mean like sitting in this area, and you can see where he is now. And from there, we trade pretty much this entire fight, except our Brigitte stays in aggressively too long, while the rest of our team, our main tank has jumped out, our off tank has jumped out, our healers are sitting further back, they're way back here, so there's really nothing that he can do but die to the enemy team right there. So at this point, once we've lost our Brigitte, and then of course our Zenyatta goes down as well once he drops to the low ground, this is a lost fight for us. We're just trying to die. This next fight, even squaring up for it, it doesn't look great for us. They have a trance, they have a graviton. All we have coming into this fight is Jolf's ultimate on the Winston for primal rage. And if the fight goes, if it goes at all, we'll have transcendence up pretty early along in it, hopefully. So what they should do here is once again, like I said, stuff us at the door, use the heavy cleave as we have to walk around to force us away. But they don't. For some reason, their team sits pretty far back and doesn't stuff us at the door. It allows Jolf to come out of the door, drop shield, and then also pop his Q to clear this high ground for our healers and for the rest of our team to move out of that choke point. So that's really good for us as an attacking team. Moopy boops our healers off the top ground or the top, so everybody drops with ultraviolet, and then they trance aggressively into us. I think that this trance wasn't even necessary, honestly. I'm not sure what the call was on their team. I think that Snow just wanted or called to be aggressive with the Transcendence. Nobody on their team was low in health, really, except for Zoms. But even then, I don't know. Maybe he saw that Moopy was getting low on his or on his health, but Moopy had his Q, so he was going to pull out his ultimate as that went along. Okay. So Xretzy uses his Transcendence, uses his Grav while still trancing on the wall so it can't get eaten. And at this point, Snow comes out of his ultimate and then is too aggressive with his positioning for him to really get too much out of it. Because you can see that Snow was way out of position here. And we just solo grab him. That's actually a pretty worth solo grab. So Snow was basically their frontlining at this point. He had come all the way over here to shoot at our back line, even though he is a 300 health Zenyatta. So Dove grabs him very, very early in this fight. And it allows us to win, just even taking out that solo target because they can't finish any of us off at this point, and they're too split to do so. So that was really Snow being too aggressive with what he was doing. And it looks like, here, let's see. And I missed Verbo's beat, so I'm trying to see it here. So this beat was pretty poor as well. Look, the enemy health bars are all full right now. If I don't draw over them, they're all basically full right now, and they all have armor. And we beat. So I'm assuming, but we're all stuck in Grav. So I'm assuming that this is a counter beat, but it really wasn't necessary at that point in time because of how. I mean, it was a really, really early beat. They had taken no damage. We were still stuck in a Grav. Nobody was in any danger of dying in the immediate future. So Verbo beats, and we get out both of their ultimates and win the fight. So this is massive for us. And these are all just off of mistakes from Skyfoxes. So we play aggressive. We're able to play aggressive here because nobody really has ultimates. We're trying to build our Grav back. We get to have a Reinhardt, which means that we have much better point presence than the enemy team can get, really. They take a very, very weird flank. Instead of just holding a corner against us, they decide to run back into our spawn. And it works for them because they're growing, or they're getting their Grav, and by Grav I mean Snow's Transcendence, fast enough because he is putting out a lot of damage. But they're not really able to do much more than that. I mean, this is an okay fight for them, but you know, it's a fight that doesn't really matter to us because it's so early on in the Streets phase, and they put so much into it, and we use nothing. All that it really does, I mean, it gets out our rally, because we rallied early, right? But all it really does is feed us ultimates, and the cart still, I mean, they would have taken a first fight there anyway, but they use ultimates and we don't. Do they use bomb here too? They sure do. So they use 3 ultimates in this fight, and we use 1. And we're close to, we're close to a lot of ultimates, so basically this evens up. It actually puts us at an ult economy advantage, because they used trance and we didn't. And we're closer, even just by a little bit. And they used bomb and we didn't, because we didn't have bomb yet. And we're a little bit closer to our own beat. but they don't even win the fight convincingly enough because it goes on long enough that we're able to spawn back in before, and they haven't backed off yet. So we're able to follow up on them really aggressively with Dove, poking from distance, and he gets a big grab here, which we're able to follow up on. Moopy, yes, Moopy does jump into our back line, but it was called by Ultraviolet, and we're able to peel for him. We're able to two-man peel, really, so he stays alive. And we just clean up. And we used one ultimate. So now they have to recontest using at least 1 to 2 ultimates. Maybe. But our Dove is already on his way to, he's already a third of a way to another Graviton. So here you can see that Retzi is looking for a grav target, which is what they need. They need a big grav here to be able to pull this back and defend. And you can see they go kind of wide here, but we get aggressive, and we shatter bomb. They're gonna have a really, with their composition, because they have a Winston, they're gonna have a really, really hard time doing anything with their blocking shatters. And because Xretzi had already used his friendly bubble, he's not able to bubble King, who's on the ground, from the shatter. And we just sustain through the grav, utilizing the Transcendence, and win the fight. So it's a more sunken cost by the Skyfoxes to try and win that fight. At that point, they had used their Winston ultimate, they had used a beat, and they used grav. And basically all we used was this and that and that. So the value that they got, because they used grav, gave us another grav in that fight. So we're a full grav ahead of them in ult economy now. As well as Jolf is almost already back to another shatter, even though he had just used it. Hot Date got good value to open up space for the team and basically won us the fight by killing their Brig. You know, and we've still got a beat, whereas they don't have one. So, and now they're fully resetting their ult economy because they have a Reinhardt. You know, it's not, we're ahead of them in ult economy at this point, so it should be, if we're using our ultimates correctly, we should be able to do this pretty well. So we rally aggressively. We rally to get aggressive on them at this corner. We don't want to give them back all of this space, and you can see that because we rally, and as they kite back, we're pushing into them because we use it as a very aggressive ultimate, as most teams do. I'm not downplaying any of that. And then we grab Moopy, who is by far the highest value target that we could likely get into that grav. It's unfortunate that Jolf gets Snow rather than Moopy with that charge. We can definitely burst through the targets utilizing the Discord Orb from our team in a grav. We don't have to use a grav bomb or anything like that. But it doesn't really matter because they use their Transcendence to keep Moopy up, and we immediately are able to kill Moopy again, or to kill Moopy because he countercharges back into us. And also you can see here, yeah, Moopy charges into us, and then we just punish him super hard. And that's what we needed to do, honestly. Once we got rid of their front line, this was pretty much just, I mean, well, not even their front line. Once we got rid of their Rhine, and while ours is still up and in very, very good health, we're fine. Well, I mean, we win that fight 10 times out of 10. So they're just dying on cart to do what they can to recontest as we push back in. We have a bomb to keep the space that we want. What I don't like, I remember Skyfox's recontest. I don't like how long Zoms waits to utilize his bomb to retake space. I also don't like, and you can see it. So right here, heck, I would already be throwing bomb if I was him. I would get out of this door and I would throw bomb on cart or above cart to push us back to allow the rest of his team to get out unmolested. You could see that he waits, he waits, he waits, he waits. There it is. So that took its time. And by that point, we've already killed one person from their team. Once we've done that, we are confirming the fight win, I will say, by utilizing angelic speed to keep everybody up. And basically all we got to do now is run out here and hang out on cart, and unfortunately they see 9, but either way we were going to take that pretty quick there. You can see. I think that if Zoms had not waited to throw that bomb, I think that if he had thrown it knowing we were all sitting on cart and allowed his team to retake a lot of the space that they had to give up as they were coming out of spawn, it would have been a lot better for them. You know, it's unfortunate, but it happens. Okay. So from here, we're running the same thing. So they switch back to basically the same thing, except here does Verbo, yeah. So Snow switches to Mercy. So basically, it's the same exact thing that they came out against us. Once again, they do the same rotation. Our Ana makes the same rotation back down to blue car as X-Retzy goes through here. So you can see that our Ana is already backed off because she knows she's the dive target. They dive in. They don't dive anything. They just dive the high ground and take the space on the point. So this was actually good by them. And then we are unable to recontest. Well, we're able to recontest, but we should have been more able to recontest. Ultraviolet gets a little too aggressive with his positioning here once again. He doesn't need to be that far up, and you can see that he immediately gets punished for it there. And they've just pushed us all off the point. Once we lose our Ana, because our entire team jumped back to help the Ana, and we were already getting low at this point anyway. Both of our tanks are at half. So we lost this fight once we lost that Ana. She was our main healer for our tanks, unfortunately. So we are lucky enough that Dove already has his EMP, and they're out of time. They only had about a minute to do anything on their attack. So we're able to get a full switch to what we wanted in our composition. So we're going to try and win this fight in one go with this EMP and figure out and get on to our next attack. Unfortunately, Dove gets found out by the D.Va just from spamming down the lane. So we're still setting up. We want to get this first fight as early as we can because we want to stop that cart. And they come in with, and especially because King had Blade coming into that fight, we didn't want him to be able to pull that out and get any value out of it, so we knew we had to go as early as possible. And then they back off the point in C9, and we end up winning. Or not winning, but we end up holding them there. We win that fight. So once again, we come out on the same thing. We make the same push in. I still don't understand why they aren't stuffing us harder at the door. I think that they have the opportunity to do that, and they don't. Like with the Brigida and the Winston hanging out just right here and being able to force people away. But we take it a lot slower this time, and you can see it's beneficial to us because our entire team is set up on the high ground, whereas theirs is not. Unfortunately, Xretzi gets Ultraviolet. I think Ultraviolet, yeah, he was aggressively positioned, to say the least. We were moving as a unit, and he gets caught out with a right click from a Zarya. So, best thing possible, we're very, very close to a Grav. We're decently close to a rally. But they're way ahead of us with Transcendence and with Verbo's Beat. So hopefully we get a really, really high value Graviton. But, we make the same push again. We decide eventually that, during talking, we've decided to try other things in scrims. Luckily, Hot Date got his bomb up and got great value from a bomb, killing the Brigida. And as this fight breaks out, we're in a much better spot. But then again, they also have a bomb and Xretzi through his Grav. The Grav got no value, but the bomb kills two. So that was good for us eventually because we got out this ultimate. We got out Transcendence, we got out Rally, we got out Bomb, and we got out Grav. Whereas we used Grav and we're 50% to another one. We used Bomb and we used Rally. So we have very, very high impact ultimates coming into this next fight. Whereas they really only have two high impact ultimates with Moopy's Primal Rage and Verbo's Beat. So I'm not sure why they decided to get this aggressive. I guess if they had won the fight here, we basically would have had no recontest, probably. But they jump us, and we have Transcendence to keep everybody up. So it allows us to push into them aggressively while they're way pushed up, and Verbo doesn't even beat. So we use both of our support ultimates, and this is something I wanted to see. The support ultimate keeps our Brigida alive, but now we don't have it for the next attack, whereas they still have their beat and they're pretty close to a trance. So we're in a rough spot going into this last fight. We should be able to push them away with our Grav because Dove runs up to get Grav from these guys. But unfortunately, we're unable to get the value that we want from his Grav, and they get a really, really big bomb from Zoms. This is a really good bomb from Zoms. It's a great bomb. It kills 3. The dude has good bombs. Can't say anything. A very, very good diva. And from there, they just clean us up. That was really well done by the Skyfoxes to finish that last fight. It's unfortunate that we didn't have the utility we needed to keep everybody up for this. Maybe if Dove had been positioned slightly differently and had both bubbles, we could have blocked it for the entire team, but it's not what happened. So, generally our Numbani is one of our stronger maps. We did struggle with it, and we are trying different things to fix the issues that we have, but well played to the Skyfoxes on that particular map.